Another global health warning as the UN declares Mpox a public health emergency.
The situation constitutes a public health emergency of international concern.
Another round of ceasefire talks for Israel and Hamas. Can this one stick?
We are stuck in the same place. I think we're gonna stay stuck.
And in the 2024 U.S. presidential election, the Democrats hold their convention this week. What do they need to accomplish?
She needs to do what nominees will typically do, which is get the party excited about her prospects, get them really behind her and ready to work for her.
Join us now on Voice of America as we explore the issues in the news. I'm Scott Walterman in Washington.
It's clear that a coordinated international response is essential to stop these outbreaks and save lives.
World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus in Geneva as he declares a global public health emergency for the second time in 2 years following an outbreak of Mpox, formerly called monkeypox.
A public health emergency of international concern is the highest level of alarm under international health law.
The outbreak began in the Democratic Republic of Congo with the spread of an endemic strain known as Clade 1. But a new variant, Clade 1b, appears to spread more easily through routine close contact. It is spread from Congo to neighboring countries including Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda, triggering the action from the WHO. Since then, it has also appeared in Sweden and Pakistan. Let's get more now from Reuters correspondent Lucy Fielder.
Pakistani officials said Mpox was detected in a patient who'd returned from a Gulf country. Sequencing to establish the variant is underway.
Our standing recommendations are...
But World Health Organization spokesperson Margaret Harris said countries had no need to close borders.
It's about knowing that you have it, knowing what to look for, knowing how to separate each other and to do proper contact tracing and not being afraid. So there's always a balance, but not being sort of terrified. It's more a matter of shutting down the infection so that those who are most at risk from severe illness, the young, the immunosuppressed, don't get infected.
Mpox, which spreads through close contact, can lead to flu-like symptoms and pus-filled lesions. While it is usually mild, it can kill vulnerable people, including children. The disease has been a public health problem in parts of Africa for decades. A growing outbreak in Congo is the country's worst ever, with 27,000 cases and more than 1,100 deaths since January 2023. 2 strains of Mpox are now spreading in the country, the endemic form of the virus as well as the new offshoot. This new form of the virus has triggered global concern because it seems to be spreading quickly and little is known about it.
Reuters correspondent Lucy Fielder. Nigerian authorities have placed key entry points to the country on high alert, hoping to stop the spread of Mpox there. They've also placed 9 Nigerian states, including the commercial hub Lagos and the capital Abuja, under surveillance. More on this now from VOA's Timothy Obizu from Abuja.
So far this year, Nigeria has recorded 39 cases of Mpox with no deaths. The head of the Nigerian CDC, Jide Idris, says it's best to be prepared.
5 designated international airports and some key seaports, including land and foot crossing borders, have been placed on high alert.
The NCDC said Nigerian authorities are distributing diagnostic tools to states. Authorities have also issued, Idris says, a vaccination plan is also in the works. The Africa CDC declared Mpox a public health emergency of international continental concern. Jean Kaseya is the head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
We must be proactive and aggressive in our effort to contain and eliminate this threat.
In 2022, the World Health Organization declared it an international health emergency after cases were found in more than 70 countries. Health analysts say the new strain is worrying and will need a coordinated international response to control and save lives. Timothy Obizu, VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
So let's dig into this. Joining us now is Dr. Jarod Fox, chairman of the Infectious Disease Department at Orlando Health. So let's talk about this current strain of Mpox. It's different than what we've seen before and more serious, right?
That's correct. So there's two main strains of Mpox. There's the Clade 1 and Clade 2. The previous outbreak that was more concerning here in the United States back, I think it was 2022 when it first came about, was the Clade 2, which was mainly amongst men who have sex with men and predominantly somewhat sexually transmitted at that time. The Clade 1, which is the current outbreak and is concerning, especially as it pertains to Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo, they have a number of cases of Mpox every year. It's just this year has become higher amount of those infections, and it's now spread to multiple other surrounding countries in Africa as well. And then this past week, Sweden notified the WHO that they had a case from a traveler that had been traveling to Africa. So it is concerning, especially because the Clade 1 strain tends to be more infectious and tends to have more severe course and a higher mortality compared to Clade 2.
Yeah, I believe there's been a case reported also today in Pakistan, though they haven't finished the sequencing to determine whether or not it's the new variant. Tell us about the new variant's ease of transmission, because it's different, as you mentioned, than the old variant.
Yeah, the concern with this one is that it seems to be more easily transmitted with more casual contact amongst household contacts. Clade 2 was more, you had to have a more significant contact with the individual that had the infection. This one tends to be a little bit more infectious. So that's the concern, is that if it does spread more, it gets more widespread, that it could be an issue.
In much bigger, broader terms, it seems to me that we're having more and more global health warnings. Go back to the Obama administration. Then, of course, the pandemic. Now this. Is this something you think that we're going to start seeing, just going to become a part of our everyday life, that these viruses, because of whether it's the warmer weather or whatever reason, are going to start being more frequent?
I think so. I think now that we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, there's a lot more travel going on now. So I think, especially in these next few years, we may see more and more of these infections become more global, just because people are traveling more. So, and like you said, the climate, there's warmer environments. So some of these viruses that may depend on other animals, or if certain viruses that are transmitted via insects, they may become more widespread because of the warmer climates. They're able to survive in their host for longer periods of time of the year, and in more parts of the world than they used to.
What do people need to know about Mpox, this variant of Mpox, to protect themselves no matter where they are?
Yeah, so the main thing is is identifying these cases so that we can inform their close contacts that they're more careful. Because the main thing is household contacts, making sure they're not sharing any sort of clothing or toiletries or towels or wash rags of any sort, because they can transmit via that method as well. So especially with the household contacts being more susceptible in this with this new outbreak, it'd be important to, one, identify those cases. So if someone notices, maybe it usually starts with a just a general non-specific viral type illness. So you may just notice some fevers, chills, maybe a sore throat. You may just think it's another cold. But then after that, you notice the rash, the pustules that may develop. So if you notice any of those, seek medical attention right away so that they can, one, find out if it is Mpox or some other virus, and if it is Mpox, get you treated and make sure that your other contacts are evaluated as well.
Dr. Fox, thank you so much for the time and the information.
Thank you.
Dr. Jarod Fox, chairman of the Infectious Disease Department at Orlando Health. You're listening to Issues in the News. I'm Scott Walterman. A new round of ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas began this week in Doha. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is headed to Israel to see if he can cement the agreement. He'll meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in person on Monday. Significant gaps between the two sides remain, as we hear now from Linda Gradstein in Jerusalem.
Together with 240 Israelis and foreign citizens, Aviva and Keith Siegel were kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th and taken to Gaza. After 51 days, Aviva was released as part of a ceasefire deal, but her husband Keith, a U.S. citizen, is still being held in Gaza. Aviva Siegel says she is praying that the talks in Doha succeed.
There's a deal on the table, and I just want to tell you that I am just so scared that it's going to break up and that Keith won't come home and the hostages won't come home. I'm waiting. I want to keep my hope because that's the only thing that I can keep.
The last sign of life from Keith Siegel was in a Hamas-made video from April. Israeli sources say that 41 of the remaining 115 hostages have been killed, although the number may be higher. Israeli analysts say this round of ceasefire talks is crucial. Eyal Zisser is a Middle East expert at Tel Aviv University.
On the one hand, there are huge expectations that this round of talks will lead eventually to the end of the war in Gaza and maybe will support the efforts to avoid further escalation in the northern border of Israel and vis-à-vis Iran.
The talks come 2 weeks after Israel assassinated a senior Hezbollah official in Beirut and allegedly killed Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Iran. Both Iran and Hezbollah threatened to retaliate, and a ceasefire deal with Hamas and its leader Yahya Sinwar could be the only thing standing in the way of an attack on Israel. Israeli military experts say the deal may be impossible to achieve because of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's relatively new insistence on maintaining a permanent military presence on the border between Gaza and Egypt. Michael Milstein spent 3 decades as a senior intelligence official in the Israeli army.
From Hamas' point of view, particularly Sinwar's point of view, this is a red line, authentic red line. I assess that he will never accept this demand and that he will even prefer to die or to continue the fighting and not to accept such a condition. So right now, I must admit that I see no compromise or any kind of bridge between the two banks of this problem.
The hostage families and the Israeli public are following the talks closely, hoping for a breakthrough. All they want, and all they've wanted for the past 10 months, is for their relatives to come home. Linda Gradstein, VOA News, Jerusalem.
Let's get some perspective on this. Joining us is Boaz Atzili, an associate professor who teaches international politics at American University. So, they started this new round of ceasefire talks, and to me, it just seems like we're stuck in this place that we're close, but we're never going to get to that point where they actually reach an agreement. Is that just me because I'm too close to it, or do you think that there's some truth to that?
I think that there's some truth to that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be this way. Like, it's very hard to guess exactly what is Yahya Sinwar's position, and he's the one who's now basically getting all the decisions on the Hamas side. But it's very clear that the one who gets a decision on the Israeli side, that is Netanyahu, doesn't want to get to a deal. So I guess that's why we are stuck in the same place. Because, for example, after basically Hamas says yes to the position articulated by Biden's speech in May, Netanyahu added more conditions that will make it harder. So I think we're going to stay stuck unless the pressure on Netanyahu, in particular from the Biden administration, is increased to the degree that he can no longer say no.
One of the main sticking points is Israel wants to keep a troop presence in Gaza and Hamas wants them to leave completely. Do you see any resolution to that point?
So there's a kind of like mismatch in the fact that this agreement is supposed to be with 3 stages, right? And I think Hamas agrees that in the first stage there's still going to be some IDF troop remaining in the Gaza Strip, but he wants a guarantee that in the end of it, and by the third phase, there will be a complete withdrawal of IDF troops from Gaza, which is something that Israel has not been willing to commit to that.
Of course, the other thing that is still on the table are the hostages still being held in Gaza. I know you have a personal story about family members who were taken hostage. Can you share that with us?
Yes, sure. So my cousin Aviv Atzili and his wife Liat Atzili, who's also an American citizen, were both disappeared from Kibbutz Nir Oz in the Gaza envelope on October 7. Liat eventually was released in the first hostage deal in November, the end of November. And one day after she was released, the family found out that from forensic evidence and stuff like that, that Aviv was actually killed on October 7, and his body was taken by Hamas to Gaza, as a bargaining chip, and that's where his body is still. So their children at least got their mom back before they found out that they no longer have their dad.
So sorry. Thank you so very much for the time and the perspective.
Sure.
Boaz Atzili, an associate professor who teaches international politics at American University. When U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris flies to Chicago this week to accept her party's nomination for president, she'll be met head-on with voters protesting one of her thorniest electoral issues, the Biden administration's aid to Israel. A coalition of about 200 organizations plans to march to make its voices heard. What else will she face as she takes control of the Democratic Party? Joining us now to chat about that is John Mark Hansen, a professor of political science at the University of Chicago. Thanks so much for joining us to do this.
My pleasure.
So, Vice President Harris goes to the convention. She assumes control of the party, in essence. What does she have to do this week at the convention?
she needs to do what nominees will typically do, which is to get the party excited about her prospects in the fall and get them really behind her and ready to work for her. She's had quite a lead up to this convention, and so in a lot of ways she needs to kind of simply put the finishing touches on her debut.
She has generated an enormous amount of excitement in all metrics, outpouring of support in terms of new volunteers, new money, big crowds, positive reviews. She benefits from a short runway, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is very clearly a honeymoon. And one might anticipate that there might be tougher sailing ahead. But anytime there's a kind of, new face on the stage, there's an awful lot of public interest and a lot of public enthusiasm for that person. And particularly under these circumstances where I think many Democrats were feeling discouraged and kind of ready to simply surrender and give up, it's really kind of given hope, I think, to people in the party and people who lean toward the party that a Trump presidency is not inevitable.
She still has to overcome some of the baggage that is being brought forward. One of the things that I saw was there were about 200 groups who intend to gather in Chicago to protest the Biden administration's support of Israel. That's a balancing act for her, no?
Well, yes, it's a balancing act for her, but the advantage she has relative to President Biden is that she's not President Biden. And my sense is that it's at least possible that the changeover to a new candidate has kind of taken some of the edge off. It was very, very personalized, I think, with President Biden. And Vice President Harris, I think, is just sort of less personally involved in it. And there's the opportunity, I think, as well to kind of benefit from people, waiting to see exactly how she's going to come down on the issue. And in a new competitive matchup where it will be clear that the choice is not between President Biden and the perfect person from whoever's standpoint. The choice is between Vice President Harris and Donald Trump.
Right. This is going to be the first time when she gets up and speaks. She's been vice president. She's been a senator, no doubt, attorney general of California. But for most of the country, this is when she gets up and speaks and accepts the nomination. It's really going to be the first time people see her in this way. What does she have to do in that speech?
Well, again, I think that she's had a lot of practice actually over the last several weeks, and she's taken to the stage more naturally than I might have expected her to, given the disappointment of her very brief presidential run in 2020. So I think what she needs to do is to just kind of stay the course that she's been on for the last several weeks. Not only are there a lot of people who may be meeting her for the first time, but they're also meeting her with a set of hopes and expectations that they'll come away impressed. And so, she's going to be speaking to an audience that's already pretty receptive to her. And I think kind of rewarding them with the kind of feel-good experience that she's been rewarding the audiences that she's drawn so far is pretty much what she needs to go with.
All right. Thank you so much for the time and the perspective.
You bet.
John Mark Hansen, professor of political science at the University of Chicago. This has been VOA's Issues in the News. On behalf of everyone here at VOA, thank you so much for listening. For more news throughout the week, listen to International Edition Monday through Friday, or visit us anytime convenient to you at voanews.com. In Washington, I'm Scott Walterman.